What's up, Chumbags? Welcome to the HQ. My name is Kandula, and today I'm joined by Nick Sivak for a brand new episode of the Respawn Station podcast. Now, before we get into it, I actually want to start off with a little bit of fun fact, to make this show educational. So, Nick, you've been playing a little bit of Warhammer 40K Darktide. So, do you know what the Emperor of Mankind's real name is?
I don't.
And there you go. A fun fact. Nick does not know the name of the Emperor of Mankind. Let's move on to the main topic of the show, which is pretty much all about Summer Game Fest. There's no headlines this week. Well, actually, there are headlines. All the headlines are about just everything that was announced during the State of Play, the Summer Game Fest main event, Xbox Games Showcase, Nintendo Direct, and all the shows in between. Of course, we have reactions on Chumbag TV for all of those main events, so you can see what we thought of any of the games that we're about to talk about. And I think, Nick, let's just get into it because there's quite a lot of stuff to talk about. And I think, do you want to start with honorable mentions? Do you have some of those, or am I exclusive?
I did put in a bunch of stuff. Basically, I'll walk you through how I prepared for this podcast. I went back through, scrubbing through each of the main showcases, and I put down a list of each game that I had at least some sort of interest in. And then from there, sure, I went through and got my locks that I definitely wanted to bring, my honorable mentions, and then also the ones that I wrote down but probably not going to talk about. So I do have some honorable mentions. Is that where we want to start?
Yeah, I think we go with honorable mentions. I'm in a similar space to you in that I've sort of scrubbed through all our reactions to the shows and then kind of okay, these are the ones that I really want to talk about. But I really do think that some of my honorable mentions, depending on the day, could be swapped out with the stuff on my main list. So with that said, let's just go into the honorable mentions. What do you have?
Sweet. One of my honorable mentions will come as a surprise, probably, and that is the Duskbloods. This would have been a main thing to bring if we got a little bit more meat on that trailer during the Nintendo Direct, but honestly, we got even less than the reveal trailer. It was just like a couple of environment shots. Granted, it looks awesome, and From Software's, art direction is still incredible, but the trailer was like the announcement of a closed network test, and they didn't show anything as compared to all of the other random games that would have the narrator being like, oh, you do this and this and this in this game. This is the one game that I feel like a ton of people want to know more about and just nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. I want to play the game. I'm looking forward to it and I want to play the game, but it didn't really do much to move the meter, unfortunately. So that's going in the honorable mention for me.
Okay. You know what? I'll also start off with sort of a surprise, a game that I honestly wouldn't have expected on this list, and it's going to sound crazy as I don't know why I'm picking this as the first one. It's Hot Wheels Infinite Rush. And you know what? I thought it looked pretty cool. And I think, again, Hot Wheels games that have come out, the Unleashed and stuff like that, look really nice. And so you take that and sort of apply it to an open world sort of formula, and I think you get to maybe some fun things. Looking forward to just kind of seeing more of it and then deciding afterwards, what if I'll actually pick it up or not.
Do you think this is going to be a broad question, I think, but obviously, whenever I saw that Hot Wheels trailer, my mind immediately went to oh, they're doing Hot Wheels Forza. Do you think
they're doing Hot Wheels Forza Horizon?
Exactly. Do you think the Forza Horizon formula being applied to so many racing games makes them better, or do you think it'll make them feel more derivative or less interesting?
That's fair. I do think that for the most part, I do think it's better simply because, for me, it's worked. I mean, obviously, I think Forza Horizon is the standard, but like, I mean, you know how much time I put into Crew Motorfest, and that was very much so like the Horizonification of the mainline Crew series, which is like, the Crew 1 and 2.
Right.
And so I do enjoy it. It's just a matter of if there's anything original that kind of makes that unique, because I think what the byproduct is that they're just kind of so homogenous that you can't really differentiate the experience from one to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even after a while, I think that Forza, I'm gonna say the Horza games, the Forza Horizon games, even like truth be told, 3, 4, and 5, I can't distinctly remember differences between them in
Mm-hmm.
hindsight. So, yeah, it is a loaded question, but I do think it's mostly for the better. I enjoy those games if they, do something cool with it. Like, and again, and to kind of my final point, like I remember the Crew Motorfest because it had that unique switch dynamically at a, buttons press to like a plane, a boat, or a bike, whatever.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I just to offer my own kind of 2 cents on it, like I like
Yep.
the Horizon games. Obviously, I haven't played many, just really 5, but I'm looking to start 6 in the near future here. And it's something that I pick up a lot more in the last couple years, how like when one game does something that does really well, you start to see a ton of other games be like, "Oh yeah, like let's get in on it. Let's get in on it." And it's like it's probably why there's one of my games that I'm going to bring up later, probably won't be a surprise, but it's another racing game that's doing something different. And I think that we're at the point now where it's like once games start deriving too much from like what's popular, and they start like you start getting all the copycats and stuff, that's when we circle back to stuff that's older and like older design philosophies that start to feel like new again. It's just something, an interesting little observation that I had.
Perhaps a topic for an entire episode.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll circle back to that. But go ahead.
How many honorable mentions do you have? Because I have like a small list.
I don't have much to say about most of these, so like
Sure.
I have 4 more, but
Cool. I think funny enough, we are pretty much matched in that way. So next, I will give an honorable shout out to Kamuri. This was from the State of Play.
I knew that this would make it some appearance on your list.
Yeah, this is Akumi Nakamura's game that was revealed a couple years ago at like a Jeff Keighley thing, I think. But back then it was just kind of, I think, like concept art or like in-engine stuff. Nothing too crazy to sink your teeth into. This was a bigger look at the game, and I'm not really sure what to think about it specifically. It's like this single player, but also 3-player co-op yokai hunting game. So there's like these giant creatures that you're going after. It's kind of like a character action game, but like each of the characters kind of have different traversal and different weapons. There's like bow and arrow and melee weapons, but it's also kind of like this merging of like timelines. It's in like a contemporary city. You're fighting like giant skeletons and stuff. So it definitely has some cool style to it. It kind of has, we sort of mentioned this in our reactions, but like we both kind of picked up on this intangible Ghostwire Tokyo kind of like aesthetic choice for it. So I think it's definitely cool looking. I want to see more. I want to hear more and like learn more about the game specifically. The thing that kind of I'm unsure of is the co-op nature of it. Like, is this a game that like realistically you can play as a single player game, or is it going to feel like one of those games where like it's a co-op game that you can play by yourself if you want? But that might turn me off in some ways. But for a first look at this, I think it looks really cool. And she's obviously a very interesting person in the dev kind of auteur scene. So
Yeah.
Curious to hear more about it.
Yeah, I knew again that would be that definitely caught your eye. I think it was cool, but it definitely wasn't like in my wheelhouse particularly.
Hmm.
Like for example, let's see, I'll go with the quick one, the Old Country DLC. It's an honorable mention
Ooh.
because it's DLC, but I mean, come on, the Old Country being a $40 game, yeah, I think it's 40 or $50, but either way, having just support, I think, speaks to the fact that the game sold pretty well. We've talked about that before. I believe the at least part like the story stuff is a paid DLC. It's $10. It comes with a few missions, which are they said, or two missions, which they said will add a few hours of gameplay, and it also has like free ride and stuff like that as well. So there's they're adding some meaningful stuff to what I'd consider a budget game. It's not even a full $60. So
Hmm.
yeah, looking forward to that.
I had fun playing Old Country last year whenever I did play it, or that was this year, I think. I can't even
Yeah, I
remember.
think it was this year.
But yeah, seeing more of that game, I think, is awesome, especially if, Hangar 13, they just kind of weasel away on these Mafia games. So if potentially the next one's going to be, starting up development or something, this will be a nice little stopgap to have in the meantime. They are including Don Salieri, which I think is kind of funny. A
Yeah,
little tie
yeah,
into Mafia 1 there. So I'm not really sure where this is going to take place. Again, I can't really spoil a whole lot, but like
sure.
there's some narrative implications of that. So we'll see how they handle the narrative connection there. But always kind of fun whenever you get a familiar face to latch onto and expand a bit more on, especially because the Mafia 1 remake did like a lot with Salieri's character and stuff. So
Yeah.
very cool.
All right. What's next?
Next up, I will go with Kingdom Hearts 4.
Oh, wow. This one
This,
is a cool surprise.
yes, and surprise is the key word there, because I think a general theme of this year's Summer Game Fest showcases, and I think maybe this might be a good podcast topic for us in a future episode, is the lack of surprise and how much stuff was leaked ahead of time, announced ahead of time, known about ahead of time. That we really kind of weren't, at least for me personally, I wasn't really feeling like the surprise or, the game that dropped that I just had no idea even existed and I didn't know that I wanted, right? There are a couple here, and we'll talk about them in a bit, but Kingdom Hearts 4 was actually one of those where like people kind of like thought it was going to show up maybe at Jeff Keighley, maybe at Sony. And then once those kind of came and went, they're like, I guess, Kingdom Hearts is still cooking or whatever. And then in comes Nintendo with a Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer. Definitely Switch 2 version, and it looks a little choppy, a little early still, even though this game's been in development. The Kingdom Hearts games, they take so long. They're like, it's like a Bethesda game dev cycle. Like they just take forever to put it out. But I think it was cool to see.
Every single decision has to be passed through Disney.
Right.
They have to be like, yep, okay, sure.
I think it was cool to see. We still don't really even have an idea of a year of when this is coming out. So who knows where in the stages this game even is. But yeah, I think it was cool to see. Also a little bit meh being that they showed basically the same area and the same moment of the game from the original tease from a couple years ago. So I would have liked to see a little bit different, but it's an honorable mention. So
yeah. This is one that I've mentioned before, so again, not a lot to say yet, but we got a new look at Blood of the Dawnwalker, and the reason I mention it specifically here is because they did a little bait and switch, and they showed us sort of this Assassin's Creed type like flash forward to like modern times, and then for a second I was like, what am I looking at? And then they go back and show the familiar kind of old medieval kind of times footage that we've kind of seen from this game before. So that was a cool little surprise that they threw in there as well. And yeah, again, I'm looking forward to seeing how this game develops. I've followed it a little bit closer than I think some of the other games that we'll kind of get to. So,
do you think that will have a larger gameplay impact, or do you think that it is kind of like an Assassin's Creed thing where it's like the beginning of the game is like set up there, and then maybe at the ending you get a little bit more? Or do you think that they are teasing some sort of like
I would like
the
jump back and forth, right? I mean, it is an interesting decision for a game called The Blood of Dawnwalker to not just be entirely fantasy. And so I hope that there's something interesting there, not just being like, oh, well, what if, we use this like as the narrative point to tell the rest of the story, It's not just like a cutscene at the start, like you're saying. So hopefully it's a deeper kind of interwoven narrative.
Yeah. I'm still not really sold on that game. I think it's what we talked about with me not being much of a fan of The Witcher. Like I just look at that game and I'm like, it looks like The Witcher, and I don't think I'm gonna like that. So kind of a hard sell to me, but cool to see you give it a shout out here. My next one may or may not surprise you. Is Stuntman Hollywood.
You son of a bitch. It's on my main list.
Okay, good. So we can talk about it in a bit. The reason that it's on my honorable mentions, there's just other stuff that I was a little bit more interested in, but this game does look really cool. It looks fun, and I just want to see like the breadth of what this game is. The teaser did such a good job of like peppering in those things, but I really want to know if there's more beyond that, or if like what we saw is the game.
Yeah, there's a lot to dig into there, hopefully. For me, my second to last pick is 1666 Amsterdam. This game kind of went through a whole bunch of stuff, behind the scenes drama, a lot of switching hands and all that stuff. But it's finally got a full reveal. We don't know too much about it yet, but it seems to be a pretty cool kind of narrative-focused, story-driven game. So I'm looking forward to it, and it looked cool from what we saw. A brief little glimpse at Summer Game Fest.
I find it interesting that this game is getting revealed when we are like in the adjacent period of when Assassin's Creed Hexe is going to be like kind of revealed. That's like the next big Assassin's Creed, right? Now that Shadows is out.
If you're not looking at Resynced coming out in like next month or whatever.
Fair. Yeah, kind of like witch sort of stuff is the vibe that I got from it. It's funny because it's like from like the designer of Assassin's Creed, right? Is that how they like introduced it? And like you kind of look at the gameplay and it's like, well, yeah, I could tell it looks like Assassin's Creed to me. You got, walking around, blending in with crowds and stuff like that. So I'll be interested to see what else sets this game apart from Assassin's Creed, aside from the like world building and general vibes.
It actually has a prologue that you can play now. But it specifically says, from the creators of Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey, Panache Digital Games is a digital independent studio founded by Patrice Desilets. I apologize, but he's the creative director of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time and Assassin's Creed. So
nice,
quite two rather notable games. All right, your second to last, or is your last pick?
Second to last for me is, I mean, I can actually do both of these together because they're both kind of connected. Sure. It's Final Fantasy Resonance and Final Fantasy VII Revelation. So 2 Final Fantasy games.
Neither of them made the cut for you, huh?
Yeah, I'm just not in my Final Fantasy phase yet. We talked about, I think last week or the week before on the podcast, the goals that we have and how I have every couple years I hop into like a JRPG. Final Fantasy has yet to really be that series for me. I have like a ton of them. I think I have pretty much every mainline entry. So like at any point I could play any of these games. But it's sort of the thing where it's like, okay, do I want to dive down this rabbit hole now or not? And I usually end up siding with something else. But uh Resonance, I think, is interesting because it's taken them this long to do an HD 2D version of Final Fantasy. I don't know for certain here, so don't rake me over the coals on this, but I keep hearing people say that this is a remake of a mobile game. I'm not 100% positive what the validity of that is, or even if it's
a remake, though, right? They said it's
I
not
thought
an
they just
original Final
announced it as
Fantasy.
a Final Fantasy HD 2D game. Was how
No, I don't think so. I think they said they. I do think it is an adaptation or like a remake of some kind.
okay.
But
Well,
because I think they said the word reimagining. I could be wrong.
okay.
What's it called?
Final Fantasy Resonance.
Resonance? Yeah, okay.
But the
But go ahead. You can keep
the
talking
art
about it.
style looks cool. I like the way that the characters look going over like the world map. It does feel very, old school Final Fantasy, which I like. And I think the cutscenes are actually pretty surprising. They didn't really have that like Octopath kind of look to me. So it does use the HD 2D style in a unique way, and I think that that's cool to see.
It is, yeah, it's a reimagining of the mobile game Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, and
Oh.
it's rebuilt as a fully console game, but without the gotcha mechanics of the mobile game.
Gotcha. Okay. No pun intended there. But
Yeah.
yeah, cool, I guess. Remains to be seen if I will actually end up getting this game or not. But, I think it's cool that they're doing that, and I would like to see more of that in the future. And then just to touch on 7 Revelation, I've yet to hop into OG7 or Remake Trilogy. At this point, I'm probably just going to wait until this is out if I'm going to hop in. And, you know, I doubt I'd be able to play each of these remake
Go
games back
through
to
what,
back. That's like
60 hours?
I was gonna say that's like a 300-hour investment. Like if you're going through each of those games,
Yeah.
but it's one of those games. It's hugely influential. This remake project has been kind of crazy over the last decade,
Yeah.
essentially, to follow it, and even before when it, from its early teases and things like that. So, cool to see that like it's actually finishing and wrapping up, and like even in the trailer they kind of have it has the vibes of the last part of a trilogy, like going to finish the job
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I think what they showed looks really cool, and this entire trilogy I think is going to be an interesting case study for people for a long time in how to remake a game, whether or not this was the correct approach to remaking the original or not. And it's a cool looking game, so it gets my honorable mention.
I think it's mostly interesting in terms of how you adapt a JRPG for modern audiences, mainly in the way that like clearly the thing that some of these JRPGs are known for is their story and narrative and not so much like their accessibility. And so it's really like making a game that has an incredible story and not just having it be clunky, like
Mm-hmm.
that's I think that's the biggest takeaway. I don't think every game deserves this sort of treatment, but like man, something like Chrono Trigger or something getting this sort of love would be like crazy and open that game up to a whole new kind of generation of players.
Mm-hmm.
My last one actually was right before the podcast, about like a few 2 3 hours before the podcast. I added it because Xbox put out a 30-minute gameplay preview of Fable, and man, it sold me on it. None of the trailers have because I don't really find Fable's humor very interesting, and I think whenever like as things start to get interesting in terms of like, oh, I see what they're showing me, and I can see the vision. They throw in a stupid joke or something that really kind of undercuts, for me at least, the rest of it. But this gameplay was just like first of all shut off the world in a just you're on your horse just like riding into town of Oakshire, I believe it's called, and it looks like awesome. Like the game just looks stunning, and to the point where I'm like, this cannot be just on Xbox Series X. Like, and I also don't know how you run this on Xbox Series S, but yeah, it looks fantastic, and there's just like a huge breadth of kind of opportunities that you have in that game that they really sold me on in terms of like, you know, you might have seen it, but like the famous kind of the popular example is that you can go into a town, and if you have enough money, you can buy every house in the town and then evict everybody and make the entire town homeless.
Hmm.
It's just like the options you have are really interesting, and the gameplay they showed I thought was a little bit more of it wasn't a quite like, hey, here's a joke. It's kind of like, hey, there's some weird quirky things happen, people curse and whatnot, but there's a story to kind of carve out your own path.
Is it like a 28-minute like unedited kind of gameplay thing, or are they like, is it still
No,
like
there's a
chopped
narrator.
up?
Like there's a guy who's like,
Okay.
I forget, I don't know what his role is, but he's like walking you through things and saying, hey, like look at this, and you're now given this option, and you can, your choice impacts what happens in this situation, type of thing. So
Cool. I'll
it
have
is like
to
a
give that a
developer
watch,
commentary.
because I too have not, like, I considered putting Fable in here, but then I was like, the trailers just, they have the vibe of like
Yeah,
it's still not ready, and they're like hiding stuff still. Like it's always just like
this,
cutscenes and
yeah,
stuff. So this is probably what realistically they needed to show.
yeah, and again, I know Gears of War kind of stole the show during the Xbox Game Showcase, but yeah, highly recommend checking it out if you have not yet seen it. Not just to Nick, but everybody else that's listening. But that being
Nice.
said, that is the honorable mentions. Before we get to the top 10 games from each of us, so 20 games total, we're going to have a nice long conversation ahead of us. But there's a few things I want to mention. First of all, Retrograde for June has been selected. Thank you to everyone who voted. It was our biggest result for voting yet, which is absolutely crazy. And Nick, I have like this theory that's forming in my head that like if you give people the freedom of choice and you give, you know, two good options and one shitty option, and it has no impact to their own personal health or wealth, they will always pick the worst option. I don't understand how this has happened. There was a PlayStation exclusive on the first month that we did voting, Resistance Fall of Man. A pretty critically acclaimed game for its time. And it did not win. Duke Nukem Forever won. And here we are again. We had God of War Ascension, we had Wolf Among Us, and Metro 2033. And somehow the least popular God of War game had the winning pick by a landslide. Like, not even a competition. It was fucking wild. So, anyway, this is your reminder to go play God of War Ascension. I just ordered my copy today, so hopefully I can get that soon. And then I have to actually go get my PS3 to actually play the damn thing as well. So, yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be a fun ride. That being said, also, just while we're talking about kind of intermission stuff, congratulations to everybody. Today is, of course, the 8-year anniversary of the Elder Scrolls 6 teaser. That's right. 8 years ago today, we saw a short glimpse of Elder Scrolls 6, and it probably, we're halfway through. We're almost to the game coming out. We're, in another 8 years, it'll be out, and we can all play it. And Nick and I will be talking about it here on the podcast then.
And everybody on the
But that
internet
being
will
said,
have years and years of dogging on Bethesda and Todd Howard and how shitty the creation engine is all over again. It's going to be great.
a whole new generation of memes will be born. The last thing, Nick, is actually sort of a headline that kind of leads into what we're going to talk about later. It's just that the two games specifically that I want to talk about are not on. I'm guessing they're not on my list, and I'm guessing they're not on yours either. So the two games are Crazy Taxi World Tour and Tomb Raider. I forget something Atlantis. I forget the name,
Legacy
but it's a
of
remake.
Atlantis, I think.
Yeah, it's like a remake of the original game. Do you know the thing that ties these two games together, Nick?
I could venture a guess based on some rumblings that I saw online. Does it have something to do with the old AI?
Yes. They've both been officially tagged as having AI generated or not necessarily AI generated content. I don't think they're necessarily like I don't think there's proof that it's generative AI, but there is AI being used in the creation of the game, and so on their Steam pages they have to kind of tag that stuff. And it's an interesting point. We're coming to this crux where I do think these are pretty decently big titles, and I mean they're not like big AAA games, but there's a lot of excitement for it. I mean, the fucking collector's edition for Tomb Raider is $200 or something like that. So it's they're putting budget into it,
Mm.
um, and I think we're at this place where we're gonna see more games that have AI inside of them, and not just for like voice lines like we've seen with like Arc Raiders and stuff like that, but it's gonna be curious how it unfolds, and also the how Western developers approach games. I feel like in the West, there's a more of an acceptance to AI. I've seen Indian movies actually that have like AI little insert shots and stuff like that. And it always throws me off, but it doesn't seem to be a problem for the markets over there. And so for here, in the East, is it? Am I getting that right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, West.
West, yeah.
East. Fuck, I mixed it up. In the East, it's not a problem. In the West, here in the West, it is like a lot more kind of a point of contention. So, yeah, we'll see how they specifically Tomb Raider and Crazy Taxi deal with it. I don't know if you had anything else to add on to that before we move on.
So you mentioned that they have to like tag it on Steam. Have they like said what specifically, or is that something that's not being discussed at this time?
We don't know exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is Legacy of Atlantis. It is a $60 game from Crystal Dynamics and Flying Wild Hog. And so at the bottom of the page on Steam, it says the following: the developers describe how their game uses AI generated content like this, and the quote is, "AI assisted tools were used during development to support some early exploration and temporary development content. Any AI assisted assets were either replaced or refined by humans in order to maintain the creative and artistic vision for the development team." That's what Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis says.
Mm-hmm.
As for Crazy Taxi World Tour, which is just a purely Sega product, they say the following about AI. At Sega Corporation, we utilize generative AI as a support tool for developers, aiming to provide better content to our users and enabling developers to focus more on creative tasks. We have used generative AI tools during development of Crazy Taxi World Tour. No AI was used in reference to the performers in the game. So
Okay.
I think of the two, Crazy Taxi seems a little bit more like, yeah, there's a generative AI in this, and Tomb Raider seems more like they
For like
used
concept art and
maybe
like idea
right,
generation.
exactly. I think that kind of stuff. Again, is it the lesser of two evils? I don't know. Maybe go read the book that I wrote, and you won't get an answer to it. But just go read the book. But it's yeah, it's an interesting point. We've talked about AI on the podcast before in video games, so yeah, definitely going to be seeing more. I think,
Yeah, for sure. I
especially from
think
Eastern developers, like I was saying.
I'm most curious to see if that has a tangible effect on sales. Like, I don't know how we would gather that information or whatnot, but if like, if there was a metric that we could point to be like, yeah, the game had this much hype beforehand, and because of this tag being applied, like it
Sure.
dropped off or something like that. I'd be curious to see if
Yeah, like wish lists disappearing or something like that. Yeah, again,
right.
yeah, we'll see. Maybe, yeah. Anyway, with that said, let's get into the top 10. Mine are not in any particular order, and so we can kind of just jump into it at your leisure. I don't know if yours are in order.
Nah, don't have an order.
All right, hit me with your 10.
Then I'm going to start with, honestly, one of the most exciting things that didn't show a
Okay.
whole lot, and that is Cuphead 2. I am
Oh,
a huge Cuphead fan. I loved Cuphead and the Delicious Last Course. Even though it did make me a little angry at times. I did go through and do full achievements for the Steam version of that game and the DLC. And just the announcement of a new game is exciting. I think, talking with you guys on stream a little bit where it's like, I kind of wish that it was maybe like a new game and not like another Cuphead game. But at the same time, the art style and direction of the first Cuphead is so all over the place that they could literally do like anything, and it's probably going to feel like a new game, just with, Cuphead and Mugman running around.
yeah.
The horrible downside of this, and they're not using AI, so you can't fall back on that crutch, but the time frame in order to expect this game is going to be pretty brutal. I mean, especially that they said in the announcement that it's in early development or like early stages, whatever they said.
Well, it's in early development, but also they announced 2 games, and so there is Mighty Cuphead Adventures, which is like a spin-off game as well. So there's
Yes.
2 things that is it MD
Studio MDHR.
what's it? MDHR
Stands for Molden
2 games
Hauer,
from them.
which are the 2 like co-owners.
Oh,
But yeah, I always love the Cuphead trailers because somebody noticed this on, or like mentioned it on Twitter, and it's like they always change like medium. Like some are like animated, some are puppets. This was like a Muppet-esque puppet versus like the little marionettes that they've done in the past. So I always like seeing these trailers, and yeah, the wait is just going to be brutal. I mean, it took like 5 years to get the Delicious Last Course, and that was like 1/3 of Cuphead.
Yeah.
So it's like, if it's about on par with Cuphead 1, like base game, like unironically, we're looking at maybe like 8 to 10 years to get this game, which is going to be crazy. But I actually also, real quick before throwing it to you, I did want to mention that Mighty Cuphead Adventures game, because there's a really interesting thing about this game that is like blink and you miss it in the trailer. And what this game is it's a retro, 8-bit style Cuphead game. They are developing this game within the specifications for games released on the Sega Master System, and they are releasing a version of this game that can run on the Sega Master System, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I love when companies do stuff like that.
That's there's something to be said about people wanting to emulate that retro experience. I suppose you don't really need to emulate it, I guess, with it. I don't know if you've seen this, but slightly off topic, but there's people who are playing Mina the Hollower, but with like the filters to make it look like it's like a Game Boy game.
Oh, that's cool.
Specifically, and it looks interesting. My next game is also probably just as far as out, because we got like the faintest little glimpse of it, and that was about it. It was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin. This seems to be like a more mature adult. I mean, the story itself, the source material is a little bit more adult and mature, revolving around all the other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles dying, and one of them being the kind of the last person to kind of seek revenge and justice, or whatnot. So yeah, we only saw a brief stuff of this, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how it shapes up.
Platinum Games is interesting, especially coming hot off the heels of Ninja Gaiden 4. So there's probably some lines you can draw to this.
In there. Exactly. So yeah, nothing more else to say. And you guys can't see it. They're like literally right off screen. There's a bunch of comics. I'll slowly incorporate them in the background. But I do want to read the Last Ronin before the game. But I only got like 2-3 years, so I'm in no rush.
Are you a Turtles guy?
It's so funny. For some reason, Alexa thought I was. She's like, "Oh, you want me to get you the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Magic crossover?" And I was like, "I barely watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles." No, I'm not a Turtles guy. It's just that I have seen the cartoon, and I've seen the Michael Bay films, but yeah, I'm not like, I wouldn't say I'm a diehard.
Yeah, Turtles kind of completely passed me by, and it's kind of
Power
funny.
Rangers, that's a totally different story. But yeah, go ahead.
It's kind of funny because, The Last Ronin occupies a similar part of my brain that Batman the Killing Joke does, where it's like I'm not at all familiar with like the
Oh,
comics and stuff, but like I know that like
it's so yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So yeah, it's just kind of funny and like yeah.
I totally get what you mean, and I do think I'm curious to actually read The Last Ronin, because I just recently read The Killing Joke, and have I talked about it on the show? I don't think I have, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
surprise, Nick, obviously Killing Joke, very prolific. How many pages is that? Do you think that like this graphic novel is, or
I think I knew at one point. Isn't it like kind of short?
Yeah, it's 50 pages.
Uh
It's very quick, and I was kind of surprised of how breezy it is. But at the same time, man, it is just so good. Like
uh
you can tell that this is like people that really understand the medium working. And so yeah, I highly recommend the quick little peruse of reading the 50 pages.
my
Anyway, back to you.
my
Go ahead.
other knowledge base of turtles comes from Easter eggs in video games that reference them all the time. I've been in many a
Uh,
sewer with a rat and pizza down there in video
yes,
games.
yeah,
So
definitely, definitely. You never played like Shredder's Revenge or like any of those like kind of beat 'em up style ones?
nah,
Mm.
remember watching trailers for them obviously in these various showcases and stuff, but I've just never had the nostalgia or the attachment to it. So I'm like, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
me
start
neither.
here. So
Yeah.
um,
All right. What do you got next?
next up, where do I want to go next? Let's go with
By
Halo
the way, it's
Cam.
10. We did not. Sorry, I just want to say we did not consult on these 10 games, so there's a chance that there's some crossover. Like I imagine at least one of the games on my list is on yours and vice versa. But go
Right.
ahead. Halo campaign evolved.
Yeah, Campaign Evolved. This was one of the last ones that I added to my like go to like my lock in list.
Interesting.
Um,
Interesting. So you those three missions or whatever really sold you on putting it on the list?
I'm gonna walk you through what put it on the list here. So
Okay. All right.
I'm not a stranger to Halo. I've played Halo Combat Evolved. I even last year was playing through the anniversary edition
Co-op,
with a
right?
friend in
Yeah.
co-op, which was a lot of fun. And it's one of the few games that does the really cool thing where you can press a button and it switches
Press the
between
button
old
and
art
yeah,
style and
yeah.
new art style. More games need to do that. That's so cool. But side tangent off to the side here. Uh, Halo is kind of always in a weird spot in the modern era, and I think doing a remake of the first game, while it's maybe like a safe option, I think that's actually a good thing for where it's at narratively. Infinite tried to do some things, but it didn't really light the world on fire. The multiplayer was really cool, but then like it kind of got development like ignored from the actual teams. Like it was like just kind of like supported on the service end, but then they like left a lot of it up to Forge people to supply the actual content that people were playing. So it's kind of been all over the place for Halo Infinite, and dev changes, name changes, all this stuff. But I think the actual game looks good. It looks fun. I think it's kind of lives in that like Tony Hawk remake territory where like it is the game that you remember, but there's a lot of like extra things in there. Like they have guns from future games in Combat Evolved and stuff like that wasn't in the original game.
Sure.
So there's some new stuff, obviously, just tangentially that you're able to play with, right? The new missions, I think they look cool. They actually look fun. New crazy environments kind of reminded me of Star Wars, the one shot of them like of Chief jumping and there's like these like mushroom tree kind of looking things.
Sure.
I think that looks really cool. But the thing that kind of sold me on it was actually, and this is something that I think is kind of funny because I've been watching a lot of reactions to the various showcases, and this kind of is turning some people off, but for me it was actually kind of a positive. And it is the Sergeant Johnson narration during the trailer, because there is this old, I just call it an advertisement for Halo Combat Evolved that is narrated by Sergeant Johnson, and he's like actually selling the video game. Like there's a part of this ad that is stuck in my head where he's like, Halo Combat Evolved, buy one, heck, buy two. And like he's just like selling it. And this trailer felt like an in-universe version of that advertisement. Like it's just kind of Johnson walking through. It's like kind of corny. Like there's like some weird kind of jokes and stuff, but to me that gave it actually like a lot of charm. And it's like, oh, like they're kind of calling back to, you know, these like weird like marketing things. I don't know if it is like specifically that or if this is just the tone of these missions or whatever, but I think whereas the first trailers for Campaign Evolved were really like, yes, we're remaking Halo, it's going to be on PlayStation and stuff, this kind of sold to me like this is going to be like a fun remake, and that, you know, I don't know if they're necessarily well, I think they've confirmed co-op, so I think you are able to play co-op, and this kind of like sold me on this kind of sold me on just like, yeah, like I was interested before, but now it looks like I'm gonna have fun if I pick this up.
PlayStation or a PC?
Probably PC, only in that it's likely on Game Pass and I'll be able to play it that way without having to spend money. Extra money, I guess I should say.
Okay. Yeah. No, that the Halo, pretty much anything has never captured my interest, other than like Combat Evolved initially. So,
does this do anything for you, or does this still?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
This looks like a desperate attempt at trying to regain some balance. You know, it's someone like. You're essentially, if I was to give it a kind of bring this to life, it's Xbox is a plane, and the person named Halo is going to the bathroom. All of a sudden, massive turbulence. You're plummeting, and this is the one grasp that this Halo person has to stand remaining. You know, once hopefully the plane kind of stabilizes. Meanwhile, in this metaphor, there is another person standing who is no hands needed, absolutely firm, and that is Gears of War. E-Day looks fucking fantastic. I thought that it felt super confident what they showed at the showcase. Like it just everything was like, hey, you know what to expect, but this is like, you know, a good look at kind of how it plays, how it looks, how it feels. I did also end up watching afterwards the direct. Is that what it's called, or the?
I think
show?
It was.
It kind of just gives you more detail on how much effort is going into these games. I said it before, I think Gears is sort of overlooked, and I think it's because it's the only Xbox franchise that's been consistent in terms of, like, look, there's Judgment as well, but, like, Gears 1, 2, 3, I know some people are a little iffy about 4, but, like, 4 is still a decent game, and 5 looks fantastic, and so it's kind of been it's minding its own business, but it's doing it really well. So yeah, E-Day is high up on my list. It's definitely like a game I'll pick up as soon as I can once it comes out, because I feel like when you're watching these showcases, a lot of personality comes through, not of the game itself or the characters, but like the developers, and it really felt like these developers were like confident, and they were like, hey, we know we've done a good job here, so just look at it. And I certainly did. I've watched that like 3 times at this point.
The thing that stood out to me about E-Day was the environment design in the game.
Yeah.
And the lighting, because I've played Gears 1, 2, 3 and Judgment, but I've not played past Judgment. So I haven't played like the modern era of Gears. And
Sure.
the thing that kind of defines Gears in my head from that older era is that, like, gray color palette, gray and red with,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, Unreal Engine 3 Gears, right? And so
Yep.
this game, while it is dark and it's evoking that kind of the aesthetic and the vibe, there is a lot of like color. I really liked the like market set piece location where you have that, like, the stuff that you love, the slow walk trailer shot like on the TVs, and it's like reflecting on the ground. You see them getting into the firefight and shooting through the refrigerators and stuff like that, climbing up on
And you could
top
tell
and
that they were
jumping.
missing. You could tell they were missing on purpose, just to be like, look at the damage.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, definitely. And again, they go into in the direct. They show off like the way that the bullet marks hit when like you're shooting at an object, and obviously, yeah, like you're saying, the traversal and stuff. Like, characters can mantle now and stuff like that, which is kind of like a crazy little feature. And another thing that I thought was really cool was like adaptive cover, and so like the way that the characters move and stay in cover, or is just like, it just all feels so good. It just like, yeah, this game's and also they in the direct they showed off like the different areas of the game. I believe there's four, and so like the market, like the city is one of them, and then they had like a few like like a refinery and stuff like that as well, that kind of maybe is a little bit more traditional Gears that you're kind of talking about, that aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, looks cool. Uh,
I will say, before we move off of Xbox, I don't know if you saw the news come out, Nick, but essentially, so there's a lot going on with Xbox. We have a new CEO. She's a little over 100 days in, Asha Sharma, and I thought that the Xbox showcase kind of, I wasn't expecting much this year. I think next year will be kind of like the real judgment of like, oh, what are we seeing and stuff. But she said in an interview that like her goal is by 2030 to make Xbox the number one entertainment business. So like over Sony and PlayStation and Nintendo. Uh, Ambitious for sure, but literally earlier today, like right before we started streaming, there's news that came out, and they're seemingly trying to be transparent about it, but there's a lot of layoffs happening next month at Xbox, and we know that for a fact that there will be a lot of layoffs. We just don't know exactly to what extent. Like, there's talks that it might be studio closures once again. And again, it feels like we're going through this same kind of cycle, but we'll see how bad it is. Obviously, we'll talk about it on the show, but it is kind of worth mentioning that Xbox is not fixed. Xbox is not like all of a sudden it's the problems that plagued this console manufacturer and publisher and developer, like they're still there, and there's no kind of band-aid yet to remedy this.
yeah, the bare minimum we can hope for is that if they're going to rip this band-aid off, that this is the last band-aid that they rip off, and
Sure. Yeah.
going forward it's in service of reaching that position of wanting to be number one. And by that metric, among the players' eyes and our eyes, just stop screwing people over, stop closing all the studios. So if you're gonna rip the band-aid, make it a really good one that gets a lot of arm hair off, like when you do it. So
Yeah.
so that way we don't have to keep
We'll see.
talking about this every 3 months with Xbox. But yeah, I'll still stick in the Xbox Game Showcase because I actually have a good number of games that they showed off that I was into, and one of those might be one that we both have, which is Metro 2039.
Yes. Yeah. It is not directly on mine, but like, I mean, I've talked about it. But go ahead, Metro 2039.
Great trailer. They always know how to make a good
Yeah.
trailer. We talked about it before with Exodus, and I think this is what most... I'm going to revise what I was about to say. I think that this is a really good formula for a lot of video game trailers to follow. You kind of have your story and your environmental shots up front to establish your tone and your vibes, and then you go into gameplay and variety. Oh, look what you're doing here, setting up traps here. Oh, we're sneaking through this area, stealth kill. The fancy edits on like scoping in and shooting people with guns. So I think that this trailer looks awesome. There's not really much more for me to add to this because it just kind of reinforces what we've already talked about with Metro, where it's like, it looks like they're taking the lessons of Exodus, they're taking the vibes of 2033 and Last Light, and they're just putting them together. And to me, that feels like that's going to be a good recipe for a really solid Metro game, and probably one of the best in the series. So I think it was a really good look at this game. I will say this is one moment where the opening shot has the text on the bottom that says in-game footage, and I was like, damn. Like, this was like a moment during this where it's like, that is one good-looking video game. So,
yeah. I think, this kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, and it's that if this wasn't shown off like last month and we didn't get a teaser earlier, and this was like the first time we seen the game, I would think to put it on this list. But there is, again, there's this nature of game getting leaked, and I think at a point developers are just like, oh, we'll show our game on our own terms just so that like the leaks won't really ruin the surprise. But it's sort of like maybe you're kind of cannibalizing your own market that way, because you're kind of the surprise is gone. Like, this is a second trailer. Again, it's a really good trailer, but it's just we just saw the game. It just got announced, so it's not as exciting. And sometimes I think the developers will use that to their advantage in terms of like, clearly Activision and Call of Duty has learned their lesson last year with how many people were like so surprised by the Black Ops 6 trailer, or 7. 7? Yeah, no.
7.
7?
We have 7 of those games.
They're so surprised by the Black Ops 7 trailer that when the title card dropped, they're like, what the fuck? And they were just like really turned off by it. I think that's why they announced Modern Warfare 4 like a week ahead of time, just to be like, hey, you can expect this at the Xbox Game Showcase. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword in that way and how you use it. But yeah, go ahead. Metro is going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. And it should have fucking won, you goddamn cowards. Anyway.
So that was mine. So
it's my turn.
What do you got?
Oh, shit. Okay. I'll go with the one that we've already kind of briefly touched on, Stuntman Hollywood. The trailer was awesome. It gave you a little bit of tease of, I believe it was Fast and Furious, Miami Vice, Knight Rider, and Death Race, and the DeLorean from the Back to the Future. Of those, I mean, I recognized quite a, like I recognized Miami Vice. I recognize for some reason it took me a bit to recognize Fast and Furious. I think you called it out first. Knight Rider, obviously iconic. Death Race is like such a random thing to include, but for those of you who don't know what it is and can't figure it out by the name, you play as a stuntman, and you are essentially doing takes. You're driving Hollywood cars. I don't know if it's necessarily like a one-for-one scenes from the movies and shows, but it's just like you're gonna have to do cool stunts that that are predetermined, I'm guessing, because you have to nail how it looks or whatever, and do different takes, etc. I initially, if you go back and watch our reaction, there's a fraction of a second where I was like, and I don't know why, but I thought it was gonna be a split-second sequel, and so in my head I was like, oh, and then I realized what it was, and I was like, oh, this is still pretty cool though. But yeah, Stuntman Hollywood definitely up there, just because man, it combines video games, movies, and cars. What the fuck?
Literally, what more could you want?
Exactly. Movies? I mean, who knows?
I basically, with this game, my mind just kind of races thinking about what else could be in it. I don't know if I told Yusri or if I told somebody else I was talking to, but I was like, if you want my money day one for this game, show like a Baby Driver inspired like opening heist getaway scene. I will absolutely buy if that's included. I think of like Mad Max Fury Road, like if you're driving along with like all the other trucks and stuff like that. It
Yeah.
I'm just not sure where the scope of this game is, because even in the trailer, while we were picking things out like that, it's sort of like, do you fully have the rights for this, or is this just like a very specific type of car that you're putting here to evoke what we're going for?
Yeah. I mean, like Death Race, I'm not sure. I feel like they are using the signature vehicles, I think, but it is like, Knight Rider, they're using the Knight Rider music, like that, like the kind of iconic Knight Rider theme song. But it is I agree with you. I think I'm curious about how the breadth of choice that you have, because there's only so much you can do with certain sequences in cars in these stunts. So like, yeah, like, having and also I think it goes along with it, because specifically when you mentioned Mad Max, my head was like, oh well, I like playing as like driving the truck and on the highway or whatever on Mad Max, but then like hearing the like the music come in, like that would be a core part of the experience. And if it wasn't there, I would feel that the lack of that in the gameplay. So very curious to see more of it. But there's a Focus Entertainment, I believe, right? So Focus is certainly
they showed up. One. They had a lot of stuff in these showcases. So
yeah. All right, back to you.
Let's continue with the racing. Star Wars Galactic Racer, bro.
Okay. I was wondering where you'd go there. Okay. Yeah, Galactic Racer. I mean, we know at this point it's right around the corner, right? It's October?
Yep,
Is
October.
Coming out? Yeah. Looks awesome.
This was what I was alluding to before when we were talking about the Forza Horizonification. And this game is in stark contrast to that, because of it being a Star Wars game, and clearly just from the levels we've seen, they clearly take place on different planets, different tracks.
Well, so it's just tracks, right? You're not like exploring an open world, yeah.
Track-based arcade racing with the pedigree of former Burnout and Need for Speed talent. They're focusing in on the destructible nature, which I was talking with some coworkers about, because it's like, a big thing with Burnout was, as the games went on, I maybe even all of them, they couldn't really lean into actual manufacturers and cars and stuff like that, because none of the manufacturers wanted to see their cars getting obliterated around destroyed corners and stuff. But with something like the Star Wars license, nobody cares about that stuff. So you can get really intricate detail of like
Watto cares.
The pod racers,
Watto's gonna
like
fucking sue,
right? Like getting like the pods blowing up, and I'm sure like the speeders will get like all dented and mangled if you hit like a huge crash. It looks fast. It looks like visually just like really strong. Something that in our predictions kind of episode, I mentioned wanting to see Star Wars Zero Company, and I actually kind of felt like Zero Company like didn't look as impressive to me as Galactic Racer. I don't know if that's just because of the systems under the hood being, so different, but Galactic Racer, I mean, for it being such a simple thing, it just looks high quality. It looks really fun. It has the right tone. Like it feels like nobody in this game is taking it very seriously. It's like, yeah, of course we're the Galactic Racing League, like, and I think that's like the perfect tone for this type of game. And I look at it and I'm just like, yeah, that looks sick. I want to play that.
Yeah, I agree. It just looks like it looks like a formula that seems very obvious to have. And so I'm glad it's finally happening. And, the Star Wars fans, you're getting something a little bit different than just a remake of or a port of a classic game, or Souls-like,
right?
For the most part. So, okay.
We'll have to do a Nick 64 video on Star Wars Episode 1 Racer around when this comes out.
Yeah. I will stick with the racing as well. And I will be honest, was not expecting us to have this many racing games on our top 10. But the only other one that I have on my list is Clutch. This is again, what you're saying earlier, and I think pretty much a lot of what you said about the about Galactic Racers in terms of how it's not the Forza Horizon like applies to this because it's not it's more of a story focused racing game, very story focused from what we've seen in the trailer, and I feel like that this is it gives me Need for Speed the Run vibes, and mainly in the fact that there is a story that's being centered, not just like here's a bunch of like here's an open world to race in, but hopefully it lands better than Need for Speed the Run because that game is a little infamous for not being very good. So yeah, Clutch just looks awesome. It is also from former Forza devs.
I believe so, yeah.
So yeah, it's we're seeing a lot of like these like kind of former developer games. And yeah, I don't think it was 100% polished in what we saw, but like I see the promise.
Yeah, I think the this game and Virtua Fighter 6 I think are both doing an interesting thing where it's taking a game genre that traditionally doesn't have a whole lot of story and
Story,
injecting
yeah.
a lot of story into it. And I think that's a smart decision to try to broaden the appeal of the game, right? Because I feel like so many racing games, like they appeal to racing game players, and every once in a
Right.
while, kind of like a fighting game, you get one that's like kind of interesting that kind of breaks the mold. I think of like a Wreckfest or something like that, where it's like, yeah, it's a racing game, but it kind of has this demolition derby, sort of
Right.
shell around it to kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
get you into to the point where it's like I'm not just like selecting car parts and going for a street race that I feel like a lot of games in the racing genre do, right? And so I think having a narrative, it definitely makes it a more interesting game just to talk about,
But
period.
yeah, I do think that it is a better case for a new game or IP versus like Virtua Fighter. I feels like it's a lot more of a gamble to throw
Sure.
in like a narrative heavy game in there, you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I The thing with Clutch is obviously like it's going to come down to the writing and the performances, I feel like, because there are so many times, I mean, just pick any of the kind of modern Need for Speeds, like they have like story. I wouldn't say they're story focused, but like it's
How dare you?
I'll even throw Forza Horizon in here. Like they have like an
Sure.
emphasis on scenes of characters talking, but the writing just feels so like tonally inconsistent with what they're going for, or just like not at
Yeah.
all developed enough to feel impactful or funny or emotional in any of the times that they're trying to do those things. And so I think it's going to be pretty tricky to nail that. So I'm definitely curious to see where that goes. The one thing that I do like that they are doing with the narrative is it you might be able to speak to this a little bit better than me, but from my perspective, it feels like almost a Need for Speed Heat situation where they have in the daytime, you're doing these races for this R1K, like this, famous racing event. And then at night, there's like, a bit of the criminal underbelly kind of comes out and you're doing stuff, escaping from the cops and things. I think you get a nice mix of both worlds there, where it's like if you want the like cops and robbers racing fantasy, you get that part, and then if you want the kind of grounded realistic like racing at an event car culture sort of stuff,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
also
yeah.
get that. So I think that's really cool, and I'm interested to see how those two sides of the game kind of mingle with each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do agree. It has a little bit of both, and so I've just like the last racing game I played, like kind of a lot of was actually F1 25, I believe it was, and that was like weirdly. So I played through the career of that game, and it does have like cutscenes, and you put your character in, and um, essentially like you know you can go through like the F2 like Formula 2 kind of circuit, and then if you're good, you'll be selected for F1, and then like that's the kind of the the big kind of title card type thing. But you're like get the deal, and you have to perform like, so it gives you this choice of like, oh, you have to perform to your standards, or you can, there's a chance you get dropped from the team if you're not performing well enough. But it was more about like, oh, I have to win, not as much like, oh, the characters, there's any more kind of investment in terms of a story than that. So yeah, I think that getting both the serious racing sim, I put in quotes, part, but then also having more kind of stakes than just what's going on the track is a interesting premise. But yeah, clutch. Check it out. All right, back to you.
Let's go with Persona 4 Revival. I'll get the... Let me just double check here. Okay, not exactly what I was going to say. But Persona 4 Revival. I think that this was in Persona fashion, a very flashy trailer. Persona just stands out. Put it against like anything, and it's like, yeah, that's a Persona game for sure when you look at it. And I've not played 4. I've really only dabbled with I'm like a newer fan, right? Like I played 5 Strikers, and I think I played something else, but I'm blanking on. Oh, the dancing game. I played that one. But really only familiar with Persona 5 and Persona 3 Reload and 4 Revival here are like kind of bringing those games up to the gameplay standard of 5, and like, they have crossover mechanics and things like that from those games, but each one is like a contained story, contained world, characters, that sort of thing. And I've always heard that with 3, it's a good game, but there's a large portion of the gameplay that's really like repetitive and kind of not great with this like tower system, I think, in the game. Whereas with 4, I've only heard like good things. And so I'm actually excited that this game is getting this sort of like upgraded treatment. It's also kind of weird with Persona because these games get so many like revisions and changes. Like there's original Persona 4, there's Persona 4 Golden, there's Persona 4, the like remastered port that came out a couple years ago, and now we're getting this like remake. So it's kind of a lot and kind of hard to gauge which version you should go with. But I think what they showed, at least in this trailer, it was interesting. It had all the sugar and candy that I like with these games, and teasing little character moments, the stuff that Persona does, at least Persona 5 did really well. So I think I'm getting to the point also where it's like I could go for another Persona. It's been several years since I played 5, and unfortunately these games are a bit of a time sink, but some Persona probably would go good at the top of next year. So
top of next year, yeah. I'm at this point where I have no idea when I'll ever play a Persona game. I own 2 of them. I own 5, whatever the second word is for that. There's Persona 5 something.
Royal.
And Persona 4 Golden. Royal. Yeah, Persona 5 Royal and Persona 4 Golden on the Vita I have. So I own them. I have access to them. I just don't know if realistically I'd be able to I don't know. I feel like I'm always playing multiple games, and that's something I would want to just like really focus on one at a time. So we'll see. Maybe eventually one day I'll play Persona.
The thing that I think is kind of funny, right, is because if you describe like Persona 5 on paper, there's part of it that appeals to me, right? But like when you say, yes, it's a game about a high school relationship kind of simulator mixed with anime aesthetic, and you're going to this thing and fighting demons, like me hearing that, I'm like, I don't know if that would really be my thing. And that was what surprised me the most when I actually played 5, and I was like, yeah, this is actually like really cool. You really get into the characters, kind of the dynamics, the social system of like you choose how to spend your time is very interesting and kind of promotes a lot of replay value, because there's always so much stuff that you could do at any given time that like if you played it differently in the next game, you would get like whole different scenes that you would have missed out on your first playthrough. So, and then the combat is turn-based. It's a bit complex, but not like overly complex. So it just kind of like fits in this nice kind of gel where everything kind of congeals together in a nice and satisfying way. And then you get on top of that the great art direction and killer music. So
Yeah, there's a few. It's gonna sound random, but like there's a few games that are like very cursory. Like I know that I would probably enjoy them if I set the time aside, but I haven't obviously done so. And I think that like Persona's at the top. Danganronpa is also up there, which we saw something from Danganronpa at the showcases. But yeah, there's we'll see. We'll see. Of course, you can follow Save Slot to find out what we're playing, and maybe these games will come up, and maybe you'll have like a 1 month streak of just Nick talking about Persona 4 because it takes him that long to play through the game.
mm-hmm. What do you got next?
Let's see here. This one's a gimme. It is. I think I'll probably save the surprise for the last, if I can, if I call it that. The Wolf Among Us 2. I really love the first Wolf Among Us. I plan on actually. So at Summer Game Fest, they announced the Wolf Among Us 2 again, like that it was still in fact happening. And then they also announced a remaster for the first game. And so later this year, when that comes out, Alexa and I plan on playing it with Alexa again. For me, it's again. For her, it's the first time, so that she can experience how cool of a game it is. It's just, it's a really fucking cool premise, obviously with the fables and everything, but also the execution of it is just really interesting and full of twists and turns that makes it kind of exciting. And I know I just came off of reviewing a sort of a similar episodic narrative game like it, but I think that there's some that are just so that stick with you in a really strong way, and I think Wolf Among Us is definitely one of those. So looking forward to seeing what they do with the second one.
I feel really guilty about The Wolf Among Us because it is one of those games that I have installed multiple times and delete multiple times before starting.
Damn.
I have a couple games like that, and like it's always been something where I'm like, I really like the art direction of it, especially in Telltale's kind of pantheon of games. Like Walking Dead, I always heard good things about, but I watched the Walking Dead show until like the governor, and then I kind of dropped off of it at that point. And so like I was kind of out by the time those games were coming out. And I played Tales from the Borderlands, which was really good, but that also kind of felt like a one-off sort of for Telltale. And they got into like Marvel and stuff like that. So there was just never anything that I really like latched onto outside of Tales from the Borderlands. But Wolf Among Us always kind of stood out and kind of stood apart from the pack, so to speak. Again, no pun intended there with wolves, but the second game looks cool. Like I am kind of upset that we aren't playing that for Retrograde a little bit, but
yeah.
At some point, again,
I honestly thought either of the two critically acclaimed games would win, but no. Ascension, guys, we're gonna send. It is. I will say that I agree with you in terms of that. Wolf Among Us specifically speaks to me because even though it is also based on this universe of the fables and stuff like that, it has the unique aspect that it's like, look, again, I'm going to reiterate pretty much what you said, but like Tales from Borderlands is cool, but I don't care about Borderlands. Game of Thrones, don't care about. Walking Dead, it's cool. I watched a little bit of it, but it's not like, oh, I have to play the game. Even though it is on my list of like my backlog, I do want to get to that eventually because, I've heard, really good things. But I did play Walking Dead Michonne. It was like fine, but it wasn't like, oh, it'll stick with me or whatever. Again, yeah, they did the Guardians of the Galaxy. There's one other. Oh, Batman. I did play Batman as well, but I just did not. And look, again, you guys can't fucking see it, but there's so much Batman back here. But it is. I was so disappointed by season 1 of Batman that I didn't. I haven't checked out the second season, but the Wolf Among Us specifically is a unique, independent thing. You can approach it with just kind of a base understanding of Grimm's fairy tales, and which a lot of people kind of know, I think, kind of diegetically just from life, with,
Hmm.
or Disney or whatever. And yeah, so highly recommend playing it. Obviously we didn't get a chance to play it this month, but hopefully, Nick, you find some time to install it again and actually boot it up. But yeah, Wolf Among Us 2.
Probably delete it and then reinstall it again. Next up, I'm gonna go with Gen Atlas. This is the Fumito
Oh,
Ueda
right,
game
Eco.
from Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, The Last Guardian. Uh, these games are singular, is the word I'll use, in how unique they are, how they interface with like a controller, the kind of emotional vibes and aesthetics that these games go for. It's very much like kind of like Kojima esque, where it's like you look at it and you can tell like it's Ueda at the helm, kind of, you
Right.
know, putting this out into the universe, right? And of the games, I've only played Shadow of the Colossus. I started to play The Last Guardian, but I don't think I was in the right headspace for that game at the time and kind of dropped it
That
pretty
could be
quick.
a laborious experience.
So I've heard. And so, like, I think I was just like, I don't want to get into it right now. But my one friend, Shane, he has played and really likes Eco. And so that's kind of been on my backlog for a long time. And I know that that also has, like, kind of a unique sort of gimmick where, like, you have to physically hold hands with this girl that you're, like, taking through the world and stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Gen Atlas, I dig the sci-fi aesthetic here. I think that that's a cool departure for those previous games that, maybe The Last Guardian wouldn't necessarily count as fantasy, but like it kind of lives in that realm to me. Whereas this is like a very much departure from it. And it kind of
Right.
feels like one of those games that feels like I don't know if you'd call it like a legacy sequel or whatnot. It's like you look at it and it kind of has Shadow of the Colossus type elements with these giant robots. It has kind of like this world design of like kind of like Last Guardian and stuff, but with the sci-fi coat of paint. And I think the music stood out to me a lot in this trailer. Like it kind of has that like synth, like almost Blade Runner-esque kind of music, but still its own thing. I think the sense of scale looks really cool. The suggestion that you're flying around this robot head and like maybe attaching to these derelict bodies
Docking.
everywhere,
Yeah.
it seems interesting and cool, and I'm curious how that kind of plays into the wider game. But then also we got this shot of like shooting these like bug creatures in like a third person kind of shooter combat. So if there's one thing I'd say about Shadow of the Colossus that I can talk about, the combat feels deliberately clunky in a way that like works for that game. I'm not sure how that will translate here. This trailer, the one thing I will say, it definitely looks real framey and like, kind of
Yeah,
rough in
yeah.
spots. So not exactly sure what stage of development this is in. Obviously they have time to clean that stuff kind of up, but yeah, I just thought, you watch that trailer and it stands out compared to everything else. We talk about the Keeley slump in his shows in that little middle area where like a ton of games just start kind of blurring together, a lot of fantasy or, just the same kind of aesthetics and game types. And this is one game that like I think pretty much anybody that watches this will be like, "Oh, that robot game." Yeah. Like, so I think it looks pretty sick and I'm excited to see more.
Nice. Yeah, I've never really interfaced with those games, but it does definitely have the signature kind of aesthetic to, the sign of the authorship. My next pick is also an obvious one, and it's going to sound weird because I never finished the first game, but that's only because the game was so good. And I'm talking about Alien Isolation 2. The first game was so scary. I was like, I played it in October, and as soon as October was over, I was like, well, I don't really need to play more of it. It's the spooky season's over. So I do now want to revisit it and go back and finish that game, but or maybe start over, God forbid. But yeah, I think Alien Isolation is a top-notch horror game, one of the horror greats, and again, it's another case of, yeah, they announced this game a month before it was going to be showed off here because they didn't want people to really, they didn't want the fun to be spoiled. But I just thought that was a shame because, again, it would have been a huge surprise being there and being like, wait, is this what I think it is? And then that reveal coming up. So,
Hmm.
yeah, Alien Isolation 2 looks fantastic. Very excited to play it. I'm also curious where like the story and everything kind of takes place.
Yeah, the biggest thing with Alien Isolation outside of the alien itself that always stands out to me is the art direction. I think they like so perfectly nailed that first movie's look and vibe
Yeah,
in general. Uh Curious, the like open environments in 2. I feel like that's going to have like a lot of gameplay implications that like the first game was this very like claustrophobic hallways, hiding in lockers and stuff like that. I'm curious how the alien AI adapts to wide open spaces like this. Like, are you just going to be like walking through an area and like up in the trees, you see it like snaking along branches and stuff like that, where it'll hide to ambush you and stuff, versus like how much of it actually does kind of take place indoors. I kind of imagine almost like maybe like a Resident Evil Village kind of situation where like maybe you're like placed in
sure.
this wide open area and it kind of funnels you into these different linear areas that you have like certain goals or whatever that you have to accomplish. So uh definitely a vibey trailer for sure, and I dig the vibe. So
Yeah, and I haven't had the chance to fully dive into it, but they did release a bunch of. They did do like a bunch of post showcase interviews, kind of talking about specifically the alien tech and everything behind what they've made. So, yeah, definitely, check it out, and I'll sure I'll talk about it if there's anything kind of cool to share, specifically from what I've read or watched.
I,
But
I
yeah,
have a relatively pointless question to ask you.
sure.
What is your thoughts? And you're probably gonna laugh at this because it's a very me thing to ask. But what are your thoughts on them calling it Alien Isolation 2? Do you think that that is
Yeah,
the right thing, or do
yeah,
you
I
think
would have.
Alien something
No.
else?
I think Alien something else would have been like the personally I think would have been a cooler title. Um, I think the reason again I don't have inside information, but the I don't actually I don't I just coughed to make it suspicious. But my assumption is that they did that because so many other Alien colon games have come out. You know, there's Alien Firebreak and Alien Rogue Team or Rogue Excursion or something like that. So there's a bunch of these other games that have come out since. So I think it's to say, hey, this is not just another Alien colon game. This is Alien Isolation, the sequel. You know,
Sure.
so to again, I don't know how you really specifically. Uh, distinguish that otherwise without that name.
Hmm.
But yeah, I do wish it was a not just Isolation 2.
Because I was kind of surprised at the end of that trailer when there was a site Isolation 2. I was like, oh, okay,
Yep.
cool. That was a choice. But
Okay. What's next for
next
you?
up for me is Clockwork Revolution. I didn't
Ah, what a surprise.
I didn't get to see you and Austin's reaction to this one specifically. Was this trailer any better for you or the
It was
same?
much better. I think it was way better paced and it not didn't take forever to get through what it quickly established what was going on, and also I think it gave you a little bit more context for like because I essentially feel like that what we saw was the s- prologue, maybe first chapter or so of the game, because it gives you the setup of like how exactly you're back in time influencing what happens later.
Hmm.
And I think it did a much better job at selling the kind of premise too.
Yeah, as if I didn't need more excuses to be in on this game. period piece, first person RPG, alternate, history, steampunk aesthetic. Then they throw in a heist setup for this, and I'm like, man, this is just like checking all the Nick boxes for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that this trailer was, again, another great one. I think it was a smart decision to be like the show closer kind of thing. It wasn't like, they had the Gears Direct afterwards, obviously.
Actually, Modern Warfare 4 DMZ was the show closer, so...
Right, it was so boring that I completely forgot about it. But this game just, it looks like it has the sauce for like a first-person RPG, your Obsidian / Bethesda likes. I think that this kind of slots in with those. It's also sort of like Arcane-ish with like, I think of the part where he drops like all the fish down. It's like you're going to come across these areas where you have different avenues to tackle different situations. You could probably just go in guns blazing if you want, stealth around if you want, talk to people, I'm guessing will be a solution because we saw a little bit of that in the original trailer. But yeah, I think tonally I'm not sure what to feel about this game. It feels serious in parts, but then also very goofy in parts. So I don't know if this is just like they're showing these bits to try to like cast a wide net and get a lot of interest, or if it's like
Fable.
Or if it's like tongue in cheek, and so like the serious parts they kind of play as serious, but they're not actually that serious, So I'm not really sure how to think on that end, but visually speaking, gameplay speaking, and kind of like the premise of it, I'm just kind of sold on. Like it does sting a little bit when they announced that it was an Xbox console exclusive, because I kind of wanted to play this on PlayStation, on the couch with the controller and stuff, but it's going to be on Game Pass, so I can at least, play it on PC that way. But I do also kind of think, while it stings for me personally, I think that is the right call. I think there is a good bit of hype around Clockwork Revolution as like this big kind of RPG for next year. And those, I think, are the kinds of games that Xbox does kind of need to have to get people interested in the console, right? If they are switching away from we want to put everything everywhere. The real question, obviously...
But counterpoint to that, though, is how... Did Avowed do that? I mean, Avowed was like the next original fantasy RPG from Obsidian. It was their answer to Elder Scrolls, and I don't think Avowed did, really move the needle in any significant way. I'm not saying In Exile might not be a different team, but like, I think Obsidian has just as much of a pedigree as In Exile does at this point.
I think
specifically in that genre too.
The difference with Avowed, and again, this might be hyper specific to people like us who routinely watch showcases, follow the news, and that sort of thing. Avowed, to me, felt like they were putting it out there, and Obsidian in general kind of has the vibe where they wear the sort of AA developer badge proudly, I'll say. Yeah, and so like it felt like they put Avowed out into the world, announced it and everything, and then subsequent stories or interviews would come out where they're like constantly like pulling back on things. People would be like, oh, can you romance the characters? It's like, no, you can't do that in this game. No, you can't do third person in this game. Like, no, you can't do this. It's open hubs, it's not open world. So it's like Avowed, I was kind of like in this weird spot where it's like it was trying to do that stuff, but every time Obsidian was talking about it, it felt like they were just like restricting the scope more and more until it became the game that it became. This, on the other hand, I think, I don't really know. I feel something about this game just feels different to me than Obsidian. Maybe it's because I'm less familiar with In Exile, and it is somewhat of a departure from like Wasteland, this like isometric kind of RPG heavy system. Obviously, a lot of those mechanics are being carried over to Clockwork Revolution as far as being like an RPG, but maybe what I'm tapping into is that I feel like there's a confidence, sort of like you were talking about with Gears E-Day, sorry, not Gears 5. There's a confidence with Clockwork that I didn't feel present with Avowed.
Yeah. I also feel like I don't think Avowed was a full price title.
I don't think
Maybe
yeah,
it
I think you're
was.
right.
I think maybe $60. I feel like this is going to be a good $70 game from for Xbox.
Oh, for sure.
Um, let's see. I will also stick with the Xbox Games Showcase. This was kind of the big one of the three. I'll just say this is one of the big games that didn't what was not announced. It was a reveal that was right up my alley. And that is Magicians: The Devil's Deal. I thought the trailer presentation was really cool with the shadow box type thing, and then slowly kind of having the character kind of pop out of the display.
This is our
Um,
first
eh,
crossover. This was also on my list, so we're both going to talk
uh,
about this one.
yeah, and I just think that first of all, if you don't know, I love Magic. Like this, like I'm a, I used to do a lot of card tricks and stuff like that when I was younger. I was actually I had a I went back to my parents' place and I got my old like high school yearbook, and like one of the messages someone wrote was keep doing magic tricks, which is a nice callback. But the like bringing magic with sort of Dishonored style gameplay where you're kind of twirling the wand and making people float, and like again, I don't necessarily think that's one for one gameplay. I'm curious to see it in full kind of motion, but just the flavor that we got there was like right up my alley and just pretty polished and cool aesthetic. So yeah, definitely excited for it. What caught your eye?
So sort of the same that I talked about with, Clockwork Revolution or BioShock. It's sort of that like late 18th century, early, that sort of time period. It just does something to me in my head. It's progressed along enough into the future where you have like industrialism and it's not like the medieval times, but it's still old enough that like all of the modern technology and convenience is so drastically different that it feels like, it's a very defined
Right.
point in time, right? And so I really enjoyed the aesthetic in this trailer. I like in the Shadowbox opening, they talk about how this character Jacob cast 5 shadows behind him or whatever, and that feels very deliberately like these are your bosses that you're gonna have to go up against or
Yeah.
whatever. So I like teasing that kind of this structure of like it kind of
And you kind of see their silhouettes, obviously, as like, oh,
mhm.
these are the five enemies. Yeah,
It's not at all the same, but it does give me like the Prestige vibes of like old timey magician
sure,
stuff. And so
sure.
if it's like going for something like that, but it also kind of gives me like BioShock vibes. It's sort of in that Dishonored kind of realm where you're going to be exploring these areas. It looks like a really defined style, something like we've never really seen before, and it looks really cool. This was what this all of these showcases needed more of, was a game like this coming on the scene that was like fresh, trying something new, and it just looked really cool. I think the trailer itself, there's a moment in the middle where it kind of does the like CG faux gameplay kind of thing. I could have done
Yeah.
without that. I think they could have just chopped that out and this trailer would have been like amazing. But
Sure.
the gameplay that they do show towards the end, I think it looks so sick, and there's just something. This is gonna sound weird, and I don't know if this has any place or what I'm trying to say here, but just like the classic magic wand of like a black stick with the white
Right.
tips, it's like I haven't just
Yeah.
seen that like in a long time.
Yeah, I feel like so much of the Harry Potter bullshit with like, oh, here's a piece of branch and
Yeah.
stuff like yeah. It was very nice to see a little dainty little wand.
So yeah, I just think the style looks really cool, and this was definitely like a highlight of all of the shows, and was immediately a game where it's like, yeah, I want to play that for sure.
Yeah, and Nick, we have this like there's a crossover. I feel like we have in terms of like the aesthetics that we like, and in that Venn diagram, I think that there's like this sort of like medieval to like late 18 or like early 1800s like Europe look, um, but for me, like this looks cool. Dishonored, I think like it like I can't get enough of that game's aesthetic. Um, but like the moment it ventures into like specifically like steampunk, I just cannot get into it. There's something about the entry into steam. There's like been multiple times I've tried steampunk games because I'm like, oh, I would think I would like this, and every time I'm like, God damn it, I just cannot get into this thing. Um, Something about the bronze, I guess. But that was mine. So it's back to you. I mean, we covered both, but
Yeah, let me look at my list here, see what I have left. I have two left, if I have that right. Do you have two left?
I have three left.
Okay, so uh, I'll go with this. This is what I was gonna say earlier about Persona, the last of the remakes, and that is the Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time remake, which is kind of funny,
Oh yeah,
because
minute and a half of that. You're gonna talk about it?
watch our reactions. I'm gonna be upfront. I was dissatisfied with that trailer. That was not a very good reveal trailer for that game. But that doesn't change the fact that that is my number one game of all time. I put it at that number one spot. A lot of it is part of the game. A lot of it is nostalgia. A lot of it is personal, sentimental story and connection to that game specifically. And the fact that my number one game of all time is being remade for new audiences, old fans like me, I think that that's incredible. We didn't see enough. I really think that the trailer was like building, sort of like Metro, I feel, where it was like building to the part where you cut to gameplay.
When you choke gameplay, and it just did not. Yeah,
it doesn't. Like it just ends.
I think you can almost watch in slow motion as like it started, and we're like, oh shit, we're seeing it right now. Like this is the game, not just like a tapestry suggesting lore. And then it cuts away. We're like, what? What? Is that it?
Yeah, and I think it's very clear they didn't make any mention of it in the Nintendo Direct that it's the Zelda 40th anniversary. So I think it's pretty clear that there's going to be a dedicated Direct coming up in the coming months where they will actually show, a full trailer for this game.
Can I just say, Nintendo, if it is the 45th or 45th, right? Oh, 40th anniversary, we're halfway through the year already. Like we should have seen at least the slate of things to come out, not like halfway into the rest of the year and being like, oh, here's some random stuff about, I don't know, just
yeah. And
also probably a release date. I don't think they said 2026, right? Probably
they did say 2026.
Oh, okay,
they didn't give it specifics beyond that. So
I really imagined that would be like next year with the movie, but
yeah,
they got to stick to the schedule.
I think talking about what we can talk about, music sounds beautiful. I think that music is such a integral part of the game specifically. I mean, it's in, the ocarina is in the title of the game, right? And so a lot of the classic, at least what I think of classic Zelda songs and tunes and stuff, come from Ocarina of Time. And so getting new full orchestral versions, most likely, of a lot of these tracks, I think is going to be really awesome. I am glad that they are not going with the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom art direction for this. It does seem like, I don't really know how to describe it from looking at Link. Like, it does look more realistic, a little bit more grounded, but it still has kind of like cartoony proportions, which is sort of what original Ocarina of Time was kind of styled like. So I think if we get some really cool looking environments, decent lighting, something along the lines of Star Fox, but maybe not as hyper realistic as the Star Fox remake. Sure. I think we're in good hands for that. And yeah, I'm very curious to see what else is different about this game, because the opening narration with the tapestry, that's not in Ocarina of Time. Obviously, like, they're talking about elements of the story of Ocarina of Time, and that shot of Link is like one of the first, opening shots of Ocarina of Time. But already from rip in trailer, they're changing, presentation and delivery of things. So I'm very curious to see what else is different, if there's like new areas, new dungeons. Is it just going to be the same stuff again? Is it like remixed stuff, so like it's the same location but all the puzzles inside are different? There's really a lot of question marks still with this game, which I guess is fun in a certain extent, but I feel like we maybe could have had a couple of those answered.
Yeah, we'll see more from this one, and maybe this is I've been trying to decide to play the 3DS version of the game that I already own, but maybe I'll just wait later this year. Okay, let's see here. I have three left. I will go with the not new one, the one that we already saw before, but I just think that it looks pretty freaking cool. It actually, the short of us reacting to this game just went up earlier today, and it already has 1.3K views. So
Oh, nice.
clearly, people are watching us watch it, and that is ill. It is. Look, this we've seen it before, but I just think that this game. I think Nick said it during the while we rolled, but like they seem to know exactly the tone they're trying to go for, and it works. Like it's specifically that like they're this style that they want, and I think they're nailing it. It looks gory and fucking just messed up, and in all the right ways. It does again. It does have some weird, cringy, sort of off-kilter dialogue that really did make me laugh several times during this trailer. But at the same time, again, I think that that's the style of the game. It feels deliberate to a certain degree, and I can kind of just kind of hitch my wagon to that kind of experience and go for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
it
looks
makes
pretty ill.
The grotesque visuals a little bit more palatable. Like
yeah.
I think you laughed at it more than I did in the moment, but I've subsequently laughed at it more, is that opening line with the doctor and he's just like, "What, are you drunk?" Like that line delivery is like so goofy and funny to me that I feel like you're gonna
get the end one where he like grabs the guy and he's like, "You be quiet in there."
It's like
it's something about it.
You just get these moments that I think are going to give you a chuckle, and that's what makes it when you're like clubbing this weird, like disgusting zombie thing in the head. I think it's, while it looks visually kind of grotesque and stuff, I think it'll promote the proper sort of emotion, which is kind of like what you get in Resident Evil when you blow a zombie's head off with a shotgun.
Right.
Like it's visceral, but it's like it just has that right level of over the top nature that makes it circle around to be funny instead of like scary or anything like that.
Yeah, it looks pretty sick. So I'm looking forward to that one. Team Clout and Mundfish.
Nice.
All right.
Go ahead and do a second one, because I got one left for me.
All right. I'll save the best for last. So the next one is a new one. It's called Crossfire, and it is it's sort of like it seems to be like a co-op tactical tactical shooter where it's third person, similar. I don't know what maybe like Ghost Recon vibes, Ghost Recon Wildlands or something. And by the way, in the moment, I was like, "This is the actor from the Last of Us Part 2." I said it was Dina. It was not. It's she's from The Boys. I forget her name, but it's not the actress. I was wrong, is what I was saying. But I think the game looks awesome. It has it's third person, which is something that's grown on me. I really usually play a lot of first person, but this one, like, it has like this dynamic cover where like the characters will kind of like sneak along when they're like depending on the height of the object. It just looks awesome. Feels like a smooth game to play. So just looking forward to seeing more of that game and actually getting hands on it. I don't know if you've if it caught your eye at all.
This one, to me, I think we're going to be on opposite sides of. It felt a little generic, like Milsimmy to me. The thing that kind of has me push back against that line of thinking is that it is from like former Naughty Dog people and stuff. So like they're clearly putting a lot of emphasis in the narrative of this game. And
Yeah.
I think depending on how they handle that, that could turn out cool. But there's like very little in the trailer that kind of stands out to me in my recollection, other than like, you know, those like moments of sneaking along with the cover and stuff. It feels like just sort of like your kind of run-of-the-mill third-person Ghost Recon-esque shooter. And
I think that the thing that I agree with you, but the reason why I think that it really caught my eye is that it sort of feels like I've talked about it how much I think Death Stranding 2 looks awesome. Like it is just a stunning looking game,
mhm,
but the gameplay is just a Kojima. Like it's not like you're not. It's not action heavy, so it has from the trailer. It looked that and it seems like it's gameplay. The fidelity looks like you see distant mountains, and it looks really good. But
mhm.
you're also doing tactical maneuvers. You're scanning for your enemies, and you have weapons, and it's not just like you don't feel slow and clunky. And that's
Right.
what I think what really kind of catches my eye here.
Yeah.
But go ahead, you're saying.
I'd like to see more of it for sure. I think the dynamic between it seems like two opposing people having to work together. I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's co-op or if it's just like an NPC that has to follow you around, but
But mhm.
yeah, that is kind of the what I picked up on.
Also, I was a little bit confused. This is not at all connected to the other Crossfire games, right?
I don't think it has anything to do with Crossfire X.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it did, but it does not seem like it. It's
Are
an
those
original game
games
from That's No Moon.
Crossfire one word and this is Crossfire two words? Or are they the
This is
same?
Crossfire one word.
Okay, that's even more confusing then.
Yeah, this is Crossfire one word, but because the other one was the Crossfire X is also one word. Like even the X is one word. But it is the third. So Crossfire X is apparently the third installment of the Crossfire series, which is there's Crossfire Legion, Crossfire just Crossfire period, and Crossfire Sierra Squad is a arcade game question mark.
Mm.
So, but yeah, this seems to be an entirely new game from That's No Moon is a developer and publisher Smilegate.
I like the name of the studio. That's No Moon, I think, is a nice fun
There's a
little
cool reveal too, like the T and M comes up, and then yeah. Okay, now it's time for the last game for both of us. Nick, what do you have?
You kind
What
of
is your
teed this
final
up in a indirect way, sticking with Remedy, because Remedy did the campaign for
Ah,
Crossfire X. They are
yeah.
showing up everywhere with Control Resonant, and going
Yeah.
going into these showcases, I'm a Remedy fan, but I wasn't really exactly sure what my thoughts and feelings were about Resonant. Right, like it is Control vibe wise, like that was obvious from the get go. But gameplay wise, they're switching from like third person shooter to this more like character action, Devil May Cry kind of combat system, which they've never done before. And
Yeah.
while for like Alan Wake 2, for instance, they had never done like a survival horror game, but you can kind of draw the line between their former games and really kind of understand how they could make a leap to a survival horror game. Going from something like Alan Wake 2 to Control Resonant, I feel like is a lot harder of like a thing to get around, or like even from Control 1 to Control
Sure.
Resonant. But I think the Control art direction blasted out into this like New York kind of cityscape, I think works really well. I think a lot of the trailers haven't expressly, like the parts of the game that you would think would be like, cut to this action scene, cut to this beat, cut to this beat. In these trailers, it's like slow-mo, almost freeze frames of stuff happening, like, mid attack or like slow motion running, which is definitely like a choice, but I've actually watched a couple of impressions because it is playable at Summer Game Fest, and so some people have been sharing thoughts about it, and pretty much a lot of my questions were the same as a lot of other people. It's like, how is this combat going to feel? Is it going to feel like Control still? Is it going to feel like, high quality, fast, all of that sort of thing that a character action game should feel like? And everybody that I watched was like, yeah, it's awesome. They totally nailed it. It has this interesting dynamic of there's like big enemies and little enemies, and the little enemies will basically infinitely spawn unless you take care of the big enemies. So it's kind of like this balancing act of like, I need to thin out the little guys so they stop bothering me, so that way I can go and attack the big guy and stop, all the ads from spawning in. So I think that there's some interesting gameplay stuff they're going with. Obviously, narratively speaking, this game is going to have a lot of implications about future Remedy games because these are all connected into the universe. And it definitely kind of jumped up on my radar from something that I was like casually interested in to something that I think out of all of the September games that are coming out, I think Control is probably one that I am going to end up picking up. Part of that is because I think it looks really cool. Part of that is because I feel like Remedy has always kind of struggled with selling games, and realistically, I just need them to get Max Payne 1 and 2 out the door again. And so if my money helps them remain in the industry long enough to get that project out, then that's where my money's gonna go. But Max Payne joke aside, I do think that the game actually looks really, really cool, and very curious to actually get my hands on it and play it.
Yeah, just a few months. Unfortunately, my last pick is not just a few months away. It's well into next year, and it is no surprise to anyone who knows me or has been watching the show. It is Resident Evil Veronica. I thought, look, I don't know what Capcom is smoking up there, man. It is. I think we'll look back on this and think like this is quite a generational run that they've got for the Resident Evil franchise, and for them, I mean, we've said it before, but like the way they've brought back this nearly dying franchise, and are consecutively one-upping themselves, regularly releasing games, be it new games or remakes of classic games that people have been wanting, but like to this fidelity that you wish this level of detail, attention, time was put into like every remake that's coming out, because of just it feels like they understand what they're making. And Veronica looks no different. I mean, obviously it has the RE engine look, but it just, the fact that we're finally getting this, and for me as someone who's I wouldn't say a recent Resident Evil fan, but I've been playing the game since Resident Evil 5, and for me, who's in the last 6 years really fallen in love with this franchise, I'm very excited to play this game for the first time and experience it, in this kind of definitive way.
Yeah, I saw a blurb on Twitter earlier that Capcom said that the team working on this was the ones that did Resident Evil 2 and 4 remake. And it's like, I mean, if you're going to pick two games out of all of their, like you said, generational run here to be like really high, high bar quality ones, those are the games. So that immediately kind of heightened my expectations with this. And the one thing that I will say about Veronica, it was a surprise. I thought it was cool to see, but it did kind of hit me in this way where I'm like, Resident Evil is a full-blown like annual franchise now. Like games are coming out like every single year for this series, and I don't fully know how I feel about that. Like the games are really cool and they're really fun, but I'm also at the point now where it's like I still haven't played Requiem yet, and it's like, is this going to get to the point where I'm going to be like multiple Resident Evil games behind, like if I just decide to play some other stuff because they're coming out so fast and like with so much regularity? I also kind of think it is funny, it's intentional, obviously, because they're bringing these games back for modern audiences and stuff. But we're on like, is this the fourth remake, fifth remake? Like, they are just going through the entire series again at this point, and it's like, I fully believe we'll get another Resident Evil 1 remake. We'll get a Resident Evil 0 remake. I feel like they're just gonna like keep going on this like path.
Well,
where...
the Resident Evil 1 remake wasn't really like a proper. It wasn't like the RE2ification of it, which I think was the kind of the
Right.
formula that they've built up. I think that I think it all comes down to, like, for me at least, is the trust. And I think that that's what these developers have been building up. I see the definitive edition. It's a ground up remake, but it's definitive because they make the changes, and I trust them at this point to make the changes that would make the most entertaining game. And I definitely see what you're saying of, like, it is a yearly franchise, pretty much, and you can certainly fall behind, depending on how long it takes you to play Resident Evil 9 Requiem. But at the same time, they're not necessarily like needed. You know what I mean? Like Resident Evil 9 is sort of like almost all of them, other than maybe 7 and 8. I didn't mean to do 6, 7 like that. It wasn't a joke. It was not intentional. But other than 7 and 8, which are connected, kind of in a more direct way, like I think that they are one story. Everything else is pretty independent, where you can kind of pop in, play it, and then be like, "Oh no, that was fun. I'm satiated," and I think it gives it a little bit of something for everyone. But again, this series is just there's clearly room here for a whole bunch of stuff, and we're obviously getting the movie later this year as well. So, I mean, Resident Evil is on a huge upward motion. I'm just like, I hope it never reaches the peak and the fall consequently afterwards. But so far they're still they're hitting it hard.
This just popped into my head too. It's kind of funny because Obsidian had an interview, I think maybe with like Schreier over at Bloomberg or something, where they talked about last year how they shipped, Grounded 2 in early access, Outer Worlds 2, and Avowed, and how
3 games
from their perspective that was a blunder, and like that was due to like I think they said mismanagement and like not properly spacing out those releases or something like that. And then in comes Capcom with a Resident Evil Requiem, Onimusha, Pragmata, like all these games coming out this year. Monster Hunter,
yeah.
And it's like they clearly cracked something, or they are also in that it's a blunder boat and they're just not talking about it. But I think that's crazy.
It could be, but I think that it's because they're different. I think that. I think
it's
the
not
primary
3 Resident Evil games coming out. It's different franchises, not even, gameplay styles.
For sure, but I think it's a matter of identity, right? Like Resident Evil is viewed as a Resident Evil game, not necessarily a Capcom game. Onimusha is, oh shit, another Onimusha game. Every Obsidian game is, oh shit, it's an Obsidian game, And so I think it's the difference between the franchise being the first name that you think of versus like the company being the big backer. Because again, to this day, I think everything that Obsidian makes is celebrated and is sought after because it's an Obsidian game. Whereas I think Capcom at this point has diversified their profile. Maybe that'll happen eventually with Obsidian, but I'm not sure. Like Avowed 2 and Outer Worlds 3 could come out the same year, or maybe that it would be different in that way. But with all that said, that brings us to the end of this episode of the Respawn Station podcast. Thank you for listening to Nick and I talk about all the games that caught our eye. Let us know what you thought down in the comments below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify. And we'll have a lot more exciting game releases coming up. I'm sure, in September we'll have to brace for impact because it's going to be a crazy release schedule. And, I'm very curious about what games actually end up coming out and sticking to the release date that we saw, and what games end up getting pushed back. Because, I pretty much imagine at this point that most of October, November, and most of December will be just kind of a crater for GTA 6 to release. But that being said, check out respawnstation.com. We have some more articles going up over there. I just recently put out a review for Directive 8020, and it's a pretty interesting game. Thank you to the Supermassive team and also like the PR team for sending over a copy of that game. That was very, at the very least, it was fun to play. But you can read my thoughts over there. I'm also working on a review for 007 First Light, so you can check that out once I put enough words together in an order that makes me happy to publish. But with that said, thank you for watching. Nick, anything else from you?
I think this is a pretty good Summer Game Fest showcase. I'm surprised we only had one crossover game, so that was a nice surprise. I think we covered a wide breadth of everything, and
Yes,
yeah, we definitely have some stuff to chew on for the next couple months, which is good.
Yeah, and as always, if you didn't know already, remember, Nick does not know the name of the Emperor of Mankind. That's a fun fact. And until next time, as always, thanks for watching, and have a good night, a good morning, and a damn good time.